Bring this Senate Finance meeting to order. I'll ask Senator Thompson to lead us in the invocation.
Bow your heads, please. Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. Lord, we thank you for this beautiful weather that we have, and we pray for the rest of the nation as they dig out of the cold and the ice. And Lord, I pray that you'll be with this committee today as we hear these bills or this legislation. Help us, Lord, to have wisdom. Help us, Father, to receive that wisdom from you and use the discernment as we decide whether to move it forward. Father, we love you and we thank you. In your name, amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. Senator Harper, we were going to do you first. You want to come to the podium, and I did send you a message. I guess you got there some
I do. I just got it. Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is Senate Bill 213. Make sure we've all got the right LC number. I've got 490438. Is that what you've got?
Yes, sir.
Great. Okay. Well, go ahead and proceed.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is dealing with energy savings contracts, specifically with local school systems. I know actually kind of come out of conversation with one of my local school superintendents, and it's a program that they use, and the impetus of this bill is, my understanding is that there really has been some misinterpretation as to whether or not school systems can actually use energy savings contract and can do this with SPLOST dollars, among other things. And the attempt at what we're trying to accomplish here is to give clarity to the law, even though it's already happening. And we're just trying to clarify something within the law to allow school systems to use this mechanisms to pay for upgrades over a period of time instead of a single capital outlay cost at one time. They can use these type of contracts to pay for those same costs over a period of time, and basically finance those projects, and that's what this does. So I can walk you through the bill really quick. That's a really brief description of what it does, but if you'll look on page 2, we're changing the definition there a little bit, is just to open it up and clarify. Again, it's a clarification deal to make sure that we're clarifying on what that means, what energy and operational cost savings means, and diving off into that. I can give you some examples of what this means, but if you got questions about that, we'll answer those.
Let's look at that operational, because I think that's one of the legal triggers that we're looking at. If you could.
Yes, sir. So energy or operational cost savings. So basically what we're getting into is the operational cost of something. I'll give you a good example of that would be if your high school in Rome decided to upgrade your football facility from a grass field to a turf field, right? Mm-hmm. Operational cost of maintaining that football field involve the cost of the water to keep the grass alive, the cost of fertilizer to keep it green, the cost of mowing that field, where you wouldn't have those operational expenses or those operational costs if it was a turf field, correct? Mm-hmm. So the purpose of that is to make sure that you can use those operational savings that you would have otherwise had incurred had you left it a grass field, use those operational savings to pay for the upgrades to make it a turf field over that period of time. That's where that operational word comes into play.
How is that prohibited now?
Well,
there's an argument that it is.
That's one
there's
of the
an argument that it isn't, and this is an attempt to clarify that.
The way you're saying operational is that it's a cost savings.
Yes.
The question is, the SPLOST right now is for, new building construction, for certain renovations.
Well, you can also use SPLOST to pay for a turf field. Mm-hmm.
Right.
But that's right. You can't use SPLOST to pay for the maintenance, but you can use SPLOST to build a turf field. Well, if you use SPLOST to build a turf field, you're going to be out that capital outlay of how much that project cost, right, up front. What this would allow you to do is use the savings that you might see from converting to turf instead of using you would have otherwise used those dollars if you would have left it grass. This would allow you to use those dollars now instead to pay for the upgraded facility over time, which in the long run saves school systems money. I know it saves my school system dollars at home because they actually use these energy savings contracts on a lot of upgrades that they have done.
So SPLOST money, or ELOS, depending on what it is, but are you saying that instead of that, you would say the savings could pay for it?
So no, it's so I'll give you an example. You upgrade your HVAC system, and you're currently paying $50,000 a year in costs related to your HVAC system. Mm-hmm. I come in and I do a project that we upgrade your HVAC system, and now it's only going to cost you $35,000 a year to operate that HVAC system. I just saved you $15,000 a year in operational cost of that HVAC system. Let's just say it cost me $150,000 to put in that upgrade. You pay me $15,000 over a 10-year period, and your HVAC system is paid for. You continue to pay the same amount of $50,000. Although your cost is $35,000, the difference is what pays for the upgrade, and I'm paying that over a period of time. This is the way these contracts work. Mm-hmm. I'm paying that over a period of time. I don't have to pay that up $150,000 up front, but I can pay it over a period of time and basically finance that project over that period through these savings contracts. So my cost is the same, but I'm not out a bunch of money up front. And in the long run, what my school system has told me, it actually saves them money over the long run.
And so the difference there, I'll go let Senator Albers here, our Vice Chair, have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Harper, so I've seen this a lot, like in LED lighting as an example.
That would actually be a perfect example.
Right. So they come in, they retrofit all the lighting. I understand rather than using all your eSPLOST funds at one time, right, you're going to use them prorated. I guess my question would be is if it's over a 10-year time, but let's say the eSPLOST is a 5-year.
Yes.
Right. Would you have issues with the timing on those?
So that's actually a good question, and there is a we hadn't got there yet. We kind of jumped ahead in the bill, but that's okay. We can talk about it. So there is a provision in the bill that would allow you to I guess promise out more than one eSPLOST, correct? Right. However, let's just say that eSPLOST doesn't pass. The company that you've contracted with is liable for those. For that cost because the eSPLOST didn't pass. It wouldn't fall back to the school system from what I understand. I'll get you a clarification to make sure that's right, but I believe that is correct.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So you're right, we're getting a little ahead because basically you're taking schools out of the energy savings bill in the back.
So to get ahead onto that too, I'm glad you pointed that out, Mr. Chairman. So there's actually confusion as to where schools can fall when it comes to this particular provision. What we're working on in the first part of the bill is under Title 20, which all of you know is the education code. In the back, you'll see Title 50. Well, school systems are actually fall under both categories, either Title 50 or Title 20. What this bill does is it clarifies, or it does away with school systems in Title 50 and solely puts them in Title 20. And so the only mechanism that school systems could use would be solely through Title 20. It gets rid of that confusion of where do I go, which title do I fall under, and specifies that it would only fall under the one title, and that's the education title, which I would argue that's where it belongs.
Okay, so just to bring the committee up, that Part 2 section, beginning on line 122, is where it changes it to allow revenue generation measures, but then if you go back to line 172, the top of one of those pages, you're taking school districts completely out of it. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Well,
Okay, so if you take school districts out, and this is for schools, what's the change on 127 doing? Is that for non-schools you're?
Yeah, that
making a
would
change?
just bring into conformity with the Title 20 section, and yes, that would be accurate. It would be used, I think it's spelled out in the bill. Any other municipal or government or consolidated government, they could use this section.
Okay.
Yep.
And the problem, I guess, is the limit on multi-year contracts. Is that what is one of the issues, or?
I think it is, but I think, Mr. Chairman, that was what I was trying to answer when I was to Senator Albert's question. School systems already enter into multi-year contracts today. I think my local school system entered into a multi-year deal when it come to the eSplost on paying for our new football field. So they were banking on the eSplost passing for multiple iterations to help pay for that, because if it hadn't, it would have come out of their capital fund. So, yes, sir.
All right, let me, I think Ledge Council is,
Well, I just
had a
asked Mr.
conversation.
Higbee, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and he wasn't 100% sure, but we believe that, and you may have addressed this, Chairman Harper, that when they put the eSplost out there, right, and they give the
Yes.
narrative of what it's about, is that they're going to do things over multi-level
Yes.
contracts. I think what you're saying is right, that this is happening today, and it's probably happening because it was actually put in the language of those who voted for the eSplost.
Yes.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're basically trying to do is just make sure there's no confusion. You're just trying to create clarity.
We're trying to create clarity in the law, yes, that you can use these contracts. To your point, there is a line in here that does specify that if you'll look on lines 112 and 113, 114, it says that the scope of the services are permissible according to the referendum.
Right.
So it still has to go before the voters. And you still have to have it on the referendum that this is what you're going to do, to use those dollars for this purpose. And the voters still have to approve those dollars for the use for this purpose.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I think where I was confused in the beginning, and you're helping to clarify for me, is when we say the word operational.
Yes.
Right, so usually there's two ways of money, right? There's a capital outlay, there's operational ongoing
Yes.
costs. I think the operational costs, I think this is still a capital cost, right? I don't actually think it's operational, so maybe it's a wordsmithing, because when you open up operational, there's a fear of all the folks that, that the SPOS funds will be done for, salaries and other things of that nature, which
Yeah.
we're trying to stay away from. I think that might be the rub.
And I get where you're going, but I think in this case, operational is specific to these specific contracts. And I don't disagree with your statement on maybe the misunderstanding or what operational, using eSplosh dollars for operational expenses. That's not the purpose. What this particular operational definition, and putting it in the definition here, what that attempts to do is in my turf field, turf grass example,
Right.
is to use, because you're not going to get an energy savings on a turf grass field. You will get energy savings from LED lights. You will get energy savings from upgrading the HVAC systems, but there are some projects that you're not going to see an energy savings. You may see some, but you will see actual operational cost savings by upgrading to a better technology or a newer facility. Or
Can I offer a suggestion?
Yep.
Because the word operational has a financial connotation, what if we change it to ongoing cost savings, right?
Okay.
Or something that would not draw the parallel of a financing of capital versus operational expense. I hear what you're saying, because
Yep.
those operational words are distinctively,
That's right.
have two different distinctions in this case, but I'm afraid we're going to open that up to people's concerns, so maybe we can just wordsmith it to get
Okay.
the same thing done.
And I'd be open to that conversation.
yeah, or is that on? Okay. Who was next? Senator Thompson.
Yeah. I was just going to say the same thing for wordsmithing. Maybe it's like what you do in a fleet of vehicles. Instead of the operational, we're talking about the labor of it. It's the maintenance and service of those. That's where you're really capturing.
Yes.
So maybe that's how you incorporate that in, because I understand where you're trying to go with this. But
Yep.
the internal operation does lend itself back to the internal operation of people.
Understood.
Okay, Senator Hickman here, oh, no, sorry, Senator Jackson.
I was going, thank you, Chairman Hopper, but I was going the same route. Operation can mean salaries and wages, and that could be ongoing.
And that's not the intent of
I know,
this.
but
Yeah.
once you say operation costs, it can mean salary.
Yes, sir.
And that means people can keep making that job forever because it's covered under, operations is considered wages and salaries also.
Understood.
Okay.
And I think that's not the intent of the way the word operational is used in this definition. That's not that
And I
intent.
don't know the right word.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
just thinking about it right now, but we'll come up with something. Or you will, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Hickman.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. A couple quick things. I guess early on when I read it, I really was a little bit confused about it all, because I actually thought initially we were talking about maybe putting a solar farm over next to the school and use that as a capital expenditure to fund electricity for the school, but that's not it. Aren't we just really talking about, and I think maybe this is what Senator Albers is talking about, aren't we really just talking about expanding the definition of capital expenditures on this? Because eSPLOS is used for capital expenditures. Aren't we just talking about expanding the definition to include some information that you got here?
Sort of. You can't expend this on any. It's not being able to expend the dollars on anything other than what you're really able to expend it on today. What you're doing is you're changing the definition on how you can use those dollars to pay for capital outlay projects. It's still a capital outlay project. It's just changing how we finance and fund that capital outlay project and how we use those eSPLOS dollars to do that. Does that answer your question?
I guess that's sort of, I'm gonna give you an observation, because I've got, and I guess I'm glad Senator Payne's here too. I got a little bit, when I was running for election, one of the things I saw, and I'm sure you got it in your area too, we're having a huge problem keeping teachers in the system. We're losing more teachers than we're gaining.
Yes, sir.
And we need to find ways to attract teachers. We need to find ways to keep teachers. We need to find ways to fund additional supplies for teachers. And some point in time, I've been working on this, so please don't anybody steal it from me. I've been working on this to try to, and I've been working with some superintendents to thinking about maybe taking a portion of the eSPLOS and carving it out and use for teacher recruitment, teacher supplies in a room, that type of thing. So I'm pretty familiar with this, but I guess mine kind of goes back to Senator Albert is the more definition of it. Operation, I know what operational cost means, and I think that I got a little bit confused when you were using the word operational as opposed to just the word capital expenditures. Because I understand fully what a capital expenditure is. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does. I think to your point, it's what, and I know there's some confusion around what the word operational is and what the intent behind that is. I think Senator Thompson and Senator Albers kind of worked through and clarifying that we're talking about the ongoing expenses of operating an entity, that we're going to use those savings and what that dollar amount would be to go toward the pay down on the capital expenditure. So it's still a capital outlay. It's still a capital project. We're just using those. It's a finance mechanism, basically, is what it is at the end of the day. That's the easiest way to explain it. It's a finance mechanism to pay for these capital projects.
Yeah.
Different than cash up front.
All right, I know we're not letting you go through your presentation, but.
No, you're fine.
Trying to get
Hey,
some of
it's the way it works.
some of these answered. Our chair of education, who right now I wish that bill had gone to, is going to weigh in here.
Well, just to add on to what's already been stated, I mean, I just was ongoing operational. I think if we just added ongoing related operational costs.
Operational out completely.
Okay.
Just ongoing cost-saving measures.
Okay, well, ongoing related cost saving measures that are related to.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right, ongoing related cost saving measures.
Okay, we'll work on that when we get through the concepts. of where we're at. Who was the ledge council that drew this up? You know?
I'm trying to remember. 49. Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. I was drawing
I
a
know.
blank.
So, you know, it's, Blake usually deals with us on this committee.
Yes, sir.
Of course, he's not here, but just trying to go through and make sure we do things properly. So basically, you're trying to, instead of SPLOST, you're trying to do a capital project not using SPLOST and spread it out over a number of years. Is that?
So you could do it either way. You could either do it with your current general fund, or this is clarifying it that you can use SPLOST. It's actually clarifying it in both instances. It's clarifying it because I think there's a misinterpretation that you can use certain dollars to pay for energy savings contracts over time when it comes to our code and it comes to our school systems. So this is clarifying that you can use you could use your general fund dollars if you wanted to fund these projects, but this is also clarifying it to where you could use your eSPLOST dollars to also pay for those capital projects over that same period of time. Does that answer your?
So let's take the turf field
Hypothetical?
again. That's an upgrade.
Yes.
You would do that under SPLOST in
Yes,
certain cases.
you would do that under SPLOST, that's
So it's
correct.
$1 million field.
And we put it on the ballot that we're going to use these dollars for that purpose.
So then, how does this fit into that? The savings from not watering the field and maintenance.
So the way that fits in is this. I'm going to throw out hypothetical numbers because without having hard numbers laying in front of us, it's hard to do that. So let's just say that it costs me, $50,000 a year to upkeep my football field. I highly doubt it costs that much, but I'm just throwing out hypothetical dollar figures, right? And let's just say that by putting in a turf field, that my operational expense then to kind of keep the turf field up and up to conformity is only going to cost me $25,000 a year. So I have a difference of $25,000 between those two figures, right? So the way this works is I can use that $25,000 in savings. I'm still going to be paying $50K a year, but 25 is coming out of the fund, the general fund, to pay for those operational expenses that I'm going to incur anyway. And then I could use the general fund, or I could use the eSPLOST dollars to pay for that other $25K that I have realized in operational savings, because I no longer have to pay for fertilizer, I no longer have to pay for water, I no longer have to pay for all that other stuff. Over time, I can use that over time to pay for the upgrade to the turf field.
Another one.
Okay, sure.
Sorry, I'm wearing you out with questions.
That's
here,
fine.
sir.
I'm not going to, this is very, very, it can get very complicated.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I'm actually, I think it's more simpler than when I first read it. Now
Yeah.
that you've explained it and looking through.
I think it sounds a lot complicated. I think it does sound a lot more complicated than it actually is, but yeah.
And no deference to Mr. Walker and Legislative Council, I'm not so sure we couldn't make this a two-page bill, actually, by simply just stating that SPLOST funds can be used in financing a capital project over multiple years. I think if we did that, we would probably be able to cover this pretty simply, and then it is what it is, right? And it could be for something more than just cost savings, because, SPLOST is a fixed amount of dollars every year that you're going to get off
That's
that one
correct.
penny, right? So a lot of times, you don't want to save up your SPLOST for 4 years to buy something that you could start utilizing right away and pay off over 4 years, right? So it's a win-win either way. I love where you're going with it. I wonder if we could maybe get the Scriveners here to consolidate this,
Tweak
make
it.
it easier for you. But I like it.
Okay. I know we've jumped around. If there's another part of the bill you want to talk about.
I'm trying to figure out what we hadn't talked about,
I think we
Mr.
talked
Chairman.
about- Absolutely. Weigh in on this with your local government experience. Are you number 11?
Yeah, think.
Was he a former federal prosecutor?
I'm not a federal prosecutor, and I've never been prosecuted. I've never been prosecuted. So are you saying if you have a net savings of 25,000 out of the 50,000, you would take that savings from what you would have been paying in SPLOST and move it to operations, or am I?
No, you wouldn't move it to operations. You would take that, so whatever that difference is, whatever that savings realized number would be,
The savings in operational costs
it
that would have been.
that would have been operational cost, yes, because it's water and seed
So
and,
that would reduce your operating expenses by 25,000. What do you do with that? I mean, is it more than what Senator Albert said, that you're just financing these projects with SPLOST?
no.
I mean, that's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line. That's what you're doing. You're financing these projects with SPOS dollars, but you're able to use those ongoing expenditures, as Senator Albert said, and that may be the better term, the cost that you were expending in ongoing expenditures, and the reason you're using that, and I'll go. Let me back up just a little bit. So every capital outlay project is different. So if you're going to do a LED light capital outlay project, you're going to upgrade your lights, or if you're going to do an HVAC project, you're going to upgrade your HVAC system, among other things. If you do those type of things, you will realize an energy savings, correct? So that energy savings, you can use those dollars that you would have saved from the energy savings. That money can be then, that savings amount can then be transferred into paying for that finance project over the term.
So if you've got $1 million project, you're saving 25,000,
Yes.
how much is coming out of SPLOST? Or whatever?
So what this would allow, so it would allow for that up to that 20, that would allow that 25,000 to come out of SPLOST to pay for that project, because that would be the payment on the project. That would be your ongoing payment on the finance project, because you're using the savings from the project to pay for the project.
So give me a scenario. It's $1 million, you're saving 25,000 a year. How much is being paid, say, down versus over a number of years?
I can't answer that question. I can't get into that hypothetical. I'll just be honest with you.
Okay.
I couldn't answer that one, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, go ahead if you're ready.
Yeah, why not? I've already taken 10. Is, in your scenario for a turf field,
And that may not be the best example,
well,
but
let's use LED lights, because there's something that's very common. People
Yeah.
retrofit a building. We know that
That's
there's going
right.
to be savings for that.
That's
The
correct.
question is, are you going to have a fluctuating savings amount every year that's going to be the payment, or is there going to be a fixed cost that says, you know, it used to pay $50,000 a month, right? We'll use your example. Now it's $25,000 a month. The savings is going to be $25,000 a month, and we're going to finance that over a 5-year term, and that's it. Or are they going to try and check it every month or every year?
So my understanding is, and I might have to get back with you on this answer, but my understanding is it is a fixed amount
Right.
that has in the contractual agreement, it's a fixed amount with a percent increase, a certain percentage increase over the period of time, and that contract is agreed to upon the execution of the contract.
So is the increase a kicker on the amount of savings, or is it just a
It-
financing increase?
I believe, my understanding, and again, I may be wrong, my understanding, it is supposed to be a kicker on the savings, not necessarily on the finance side, but I could see where you could argue it both ways.
And therein lies the rub. So, okay.
Okay.
I think they're baking in, if I'm not mistaken, I've looked at this before, they bake in the capital outlay up front.
Right.
They calculate what they think the savings is going to be. They benefit, they get a share of that savings, right? So
Yes.
They're basically, they're taking the risk, put the money up front, and then over 10 years or whatever, the school or the county would pay that energy
That's correct.
to basically carry the risk.
Yes.
Assuming there's going to be an
savings, they benefit from that. So,
Okay.
All right, so these,
different financial
A-
arrangements, pretty much the same as going to the bank.
Actually, Senator Gooch, I would argue, probably hit the nail on the head. This is just a completely different financing arrangement, is, at the end of the day, that's what this amounts to.
so I think it gets back to the initial issue, which is you have to just put that in the SPOST, right? You have to just detail out
Yes.
that, you know, this is
Which
gonna be
is,
by
which is
all
why
the
it's
really does-
specifically in the language that I got in the bill that's in front of you.
I think your challenge, Senator, is going to be on using the SPOS dollars for the differential. It might be easy to say, we know we're going to guarantee $25,000 a month to pay for this thing over 5 years, and if it saves 30, and they get 2,500, and you get 2,500, right, they may have to pay that out of operational costs, because it'd be hard to write that into a SPOS, I think. I could be wrong, because how are you going to be able to budget your variable numbers if you don't know what they're going to come in at every year? So I think you can get probably 95% of what you want by just allowing them to use it for the hard cost, and then whatever the variable is that you pick. If they pay that operational cost, they're still going to be huge winners, right?
But you're not, the beauty of these arrangements is that the county or the school doesn't have to put that capital cost up front.
No, I understand that.
An entire LED system could be $1 million, for the Musco lighting system, maybe $1 million. Instead of the school doing that up front, this company comes in and does it.
Oh, no, I understand what you're saying, but let's say they pay $250 a year, but there's a
Capital
kicker.
outlay should be the same over 10 years.
Well, no, actually, I think it could be a little higher, right? I think that's what he's trying to work on, which I think is good. So let's say it's going to be paid out over, $50,000 a year, right? Which makes perfect sense to finance it. But the kicker in the contract is, you know what? If we saved you $55,000 a year, right, then we want to share in the extra, right? I think that's where the challenge, but a good challenge lies. I think what the extra is, you could pay out of operational funds. Everything else could be a normal capital SPOS expense.
All right, let me hear from two lawyers now, one on the committee and one in Ledge Council. I think you're number 5 here,
Thank
Senator
you.
Cowsett.
I'm a little hung up, and I might be wrong, but my recollection was East Blast could only last for a period of 5 years.
Yes, sir.
But are we talking about contracts that are longer than 5 years?
So we've had this discussion a little bit, I think.
Okay, I might have missed
But
that.
before you got here, Senator Cowsert, so I'll just reiterate. So actually, school systems, governments can enter into contracts or enter into capital outlay projects that last longer than their SPOS does. They can do that today. School systems do it. Local governments do it. So that is not a new mechanism. They do that already. They take the risk at doing that because if the SPLOST doesn't pass or the eSPLOST doesn't pass, then that local government entity is then liable for those costs out of their general fund, and they know that. But today, they do that right now. This would just extend that same provision if you use these type of contracts. So it's already allowed under law. This just extends it to these specific type of contracts as well.
But they're entering into them on the basis of they're putting it in an East Blast for the voters to approve for a finite period of time that is shorter than the length of the obligation.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
And like I said, that's currently ongoing. The difference, though, from my understanding with this, Senator Cowsert, is I believe, and I told Senator Albers this earlier, I'm going to clarify this, but I believe under this particular agreement, the company that they financed with to do these projects would be liable, not necessarily the school system if the eSPLOST didn't pass.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm going to
If the
ask,
secondary SPLOST didn't pass.
I'm going to ask Ledge Council opinion. I know you didn't draft this, and you're typically not here on this committee, but tell us what you see of this.
Well, Chairman, the main thing that jumps out at me, and yeah, I read this for the first time about 15 minutes ago, but there's been a lot of focus in line 19 on the word operational. And I just want to make the point legally that energy or operational cost savings measure is a defined term. And quite frankly, the wording of the defined term itself, what's between these two single quotation marks, could be peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The meat of the definition is what comes after means a. And so as I look at this definition and read through it, means a facility alteration, and there's this whole laundry list of things, but what, as I read through it, really caught my attention once I had a chance to read through it. If you flip over to the next page at the top, lines 41 through 44, any other measure not otherwise defined in this code section, which is designed to reduce energy or water consumption, reduce wastewater production, enhance revenue, avoid capital costs, or achieve similar efficiency gains by the county, independent, or area school system. And so if you, number one, understand that the wording of the defined term itself, it's not that it has no legal significance, but it doesn't necessarily have much legal significance. And then you look at the actual definition as a whole. I just, especially when I get to that the new wording on lines 41 to 44, I see that as really reining things in. So I just wanted to make that legal point, Chairman.
Okay, I guess my opinion is this is, pardon?
He's actually kind of helping me a little bit.
Yeah, I think this probably needs a little bit more work than we can do today. I know we've got till Monday. We weren't necessarily going to have another meeting, but I think we've got to get a few people together and try to get this worked out and see if we can do something with it, if that's okay with you.
Well, look, Mr. Chairman, I'm at the pleasure of the committee, and if you want to circle up, I'd be more than happy to get with you and others to make sure that we wordsmith this and pair this into a version that we can work together to move forward on.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the long run, it's a good thing for local school systems across the state, and especially rural systems where they're a little more financially capped than other systems. So anything we can do to help move this forward, Mr. Chairman, I'd be for.
Okay, and you know, we got it a little bit late, but I was still trying to.
Well, yeah, it was trying to get, honestly, Mr. Chairman, it was us trying to get it all put together and wordsmith on our side, and maybe we tried to wordsmith it too much, Senator Albers. I do know that we got it in a little late, but hopefully we can circle up and work on it and try to move it forward. I would appreciate
we'll try to do
that.
and I'll try to have Ledge Council, maybe Senator Albers involved if that's okay.
I'm to the pleasure of the committee, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, we appreciate you being here today, and
yes, sir.
Thanks for the presentation.
Well,
the
I look forward to the further conversation, and we'll
thinking
circle
outside
up.
the box and being creative.
I'm all about thinking outside the box, Mr. Chairman, and that box is pretty big, even though I'm pretty small. Even if I'm standing on the box. I did that about 9 years ago to my good colleague, Senator Gooch. But thank you to the members of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. All right, the next bill is one that I've got, so I'm going to swap places with the vice chair and let him preside over the meeting here. You've got also Brandy on.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got Senate Bill 31. Everybody should have in front of them. Make sure we got the right numbers here, LC 8695S. And I'll turn it over to you, Chairman Hufstauber.
Let me pull that out of my file now.
All right.
Well, I might have left 9. Let me see here. Yeah. Is that your copy?
Yeah, but I'll get another one from, we can get one from another folder, I'm sure.
It's probably in here. I'm just,
You can start.
I've got it. Never mind.
All right.
At the very bottom.
We found it.
Okay.
We have LC 8695S, 33. Yeah. Uh-oh. Everybody, please pull out. You should have a substitute to Senate Bill 31. It should say LC 33 8695S Does anyone not have that?
Just have a seat down there at the end if you would.
You have a different version? Okay. Okay, this is a committee substitute. That's why you've got a different version, Senator. Okay, go ahead,
All right,
Chairman Hufstedler.
And one of the changes in the subsheet was moving the date back on this. But this is a little bit of thinking outside the box. This was actually proposed by a House member last year, and this is simply a simulation that would be done looking at charity and indigent care. There's a lot of different definitions out there that standards that people have. You know, is it Medicare? Is it another number that's being used? And so we're trying to get all the data together and look at this and look at what every hospital is doing and trying to see if there's some way to look at this and eventually say either, no, there's really nothing here, or maybe there's a different way to do this. So the bill itself has no dollar changes at all in it. This is simply a test, just a simulation test for a year, but would look at what each hospital is doing. The original bill also had could have been defined as some nursing homes, and that wasn't the intent, so that's been taken out of that. But it would use the data for a period of time to say, let's see what everybody's doing around the state. And to do this, we really can't just take a hospital's percentage of uncompensated care. We've got to get to the data claims themselves, and
As opposed to what they claim.
as opposed to, yeah, the numbers that are there. And some of this is reported to DCH. I don't think all of it is. So that's the concept. With that, I know that the representative, who is far more IT savvy than me on the House side, is here and can also speak to this. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Questions from the committee members? We want to bring Representative Jones up. I've got a question from Senator Orrock.
It might help to do the background on the charity care, the uncompensated indigent charity care, and how that works now. Why it even matters? What's the current paradigm in which we're working?
Well, I don't know that there's a standard definition of what is indigent and charity care. There's a number that's reported from each facility, and on, say on Medicare, Medicaid claims, that kind of thing, the DCH would have those numbers. But if there's no claim because there's no care, then I don't know that we've got the numbers on that. And so this would be a way first to try to look at what the numbers are and see where we're hurting in some areas, who's maybe taking a bigger share of load than others, and look at this down the road and say, is there a better way to do this?
Right, because the way it's being done now is what? ABC. I mean, it's been in place for some time now, right? But people that are just getting here don't know about that.
Right, and you do have a 3% level you have to meet to meet the definition of what's expected of a hospital here. And I think most everybody probably is meeting that. But again, the definitions may be different for each hospital. So this would be an attempt to level that out. And if the House member who started this concept, if you'd allow him to speak at this time, I think he could perhaps address some of this too.
Representative Jones, why don't you come up to the podium for us?
I don't think people know why
Great. All right, Representative Jones, why don't you give us a quick overview, and then I think we'll have some further questions.
Yes, sir. To answer the senator's question directly, first, charitable care is effectively defined by the institution themselves. So you will find, I'll say, a myriad of standards in terms of what is defined as charitable care. It will depend. You have to look at certain forms that they present to you, and then you would see that. But there is no consistent definition of charitable care, to answer the lady's question.
They'll report that they went out in the community and did some educational stuff.
Correct.
And they put that in the column that they're reporting, and another hospital doesn't use that same kind of activity.
Yes, ma'am. And a finer example even would be some say it's 150% of the federal poverty level. Some move charitable care all the way up to 400% of federal poverty level. Again, it's not for me to say that's right or wrong, but I just wanted to emphasize, to your point, there is different definitions. Yes.
Consistency is what we'd like to get at.
That would be one, I think, of the goals of the pilot. Yes.
Representative Jones, while you're here, is there anything else that you'd like to speak of in bill in general?
Sure. Just to answer the second question from Senator O'Rourke, in terms of what's the problem we're trying to solve, I think standardization is one, but to be frank with you, Senator, I think that might be the third problem we're trying to solve. At the end of the day, I think many of you hear the same thing from our hospital institutions and our nonprofits, which is we have a challenge with access and money. So what we wanted to be able to do was the nonprofit benefit itself. When you think about the definition of it and why that nonprofit benefit even exists, the state granted that because of the fact it was trying to create a better environment to create care all around the state, not just in certain metropolitan areas. So we want to be able to determine, can we, through establishing a floor or basically a minimum of charitable and indigent care, can we establish a more equal distribution of that money through an exchange, through basically encouraging investment into rural and urban hospitals, and possibly even mergers and acquisitions around that. But ultimately, what the test does, it does not touch policy at all. It does 1 week in April, 1 week in the fall, and it gives us 1 million simulations each week so that we can be better equipped to determine, will it work? Because we don't know if it will work. If it does work, what do we think are the recommendations coming out of that pilot? I hope that helps, Senator.
Senator
Yeah,
O'Rourke?
yeah, so maybe go back to the origins of why this formula was, we came up with it, and what does it do? We didn't always have this in law, and this was an effort to, for hospitals to get, it's all about uncompensated care.
Uncompensated care.
It's uncompensated care, and frankly, rooted in a lot of uninsured lives presenting in hospitals they're not covered. But I know some people are brand new to this.
So the theory was,
Yes.
to Senator Hofstadter's point, the theory was that we were going to create, and by the way, what's in law today, forget the bill just for one moment,
Exactly.
what's in law today,
Right.
the theory was that we were going to require a certain minimum level, and then we were going to require those hospitals to move X% of money into Atlanta, or basically the capital, and then at that point then, based on your uncompensated care, your indigent care, your charitable care, et cetera, you would then get a disbursement from that fund. Okay? So theoretically, it was basically, let's pull in, let's create a pot, and then let's distribute. I don't know if you're taking testimony today, I think you will hear that that system isn't necessarily working as they intended it to. So the question becomes is, would a system like this, that we've seen work literally as far back as the 70s, but under the guise of a cap instead of a floor, can we use another type of system that has more of a market-based approach that would allow for the individual hospitals, to not nonprofit hospitals and healthcare institutions, to be able to move the capital as they deem appropriate based on the achievement of the floor, the miss of the floor, or the overage of the floor.
Okay. Other questions? I believe Senator Jackson, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question for Chairman Hofstadter. So we're requiring these not-for-profit hospitals to be able to collect a massive amount of data, all right? And it's my understanding they won't be compensated for all this data they have to collect.
Well, I would say that the data already exists. This is, it's basically, in my opinion, a data dump of information that's there. And I know we've had IT people that said they would do it pro bono, they would help out in it. And I've also heard from the Lieutenant Governor's office that if there's funds needed to help with this, that they felt like they could get that in the budget. I mean, I've heard, we've moved it till next year. I've heard the arguments of, it's a lot of data to collect.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we're getting that data. I mean, I was on a management board of a hospital for 8 years in the past, and I think the data is available.
Yeah.
I just think it's having the data for 1 week. I don't see that as being a big deal personally.
Okay, all right. Second, another question, also, Mr. Chairman, what do you just think about allowing the buying and selling of indigent care of these nonprofit hospitals? Because that's what we're doing. We're encouraging them to buy and sell.
Well, it's a simulation that would look at, same as, say, a carbon tax credit or something like that, or what's another example? I'm trying to think of one. But it would be trying to make sure if you're not doing the same level of indigent care, and maybe you can't, maybe they don't come to your hospital, trying to look at the load, because we force hospitals to take this care on uncompensated under EMTALA back from the 80s. There's really no choice in a lot of it. And so what can we do to help out on this? And should we look at maybe 3% is not the number, maybe it should be 4%. I don't know, but until we get the data, we can't really say, is there anything we can do or we can't do, is the issue. Just, this is simply a study for a very brief period of time.
If I could add, you're also going to have uniform information for your study, right? Because today you can't study stuff because it's different. I said, can you hear me now? Okay. I think the part of this too is uniform standards, right, Mr. Chairman? So uniform standards will allow you to actually pull that information and compare apples to apples.
That's what we're trying to get to, right?
All right. Senator Hickman?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. First question is, how does the Georgia Hospital Association look at this? Have y'all talked to them about it?
We have.
And what are their thoughts?
The Hospital Association is not in support of the bill?
Yes or no? Not?
I'm sorry.
We're
not.
going to hear from them, Senator Hickman, in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. The second, I didn't realize it. Okay. The second thing is, unless I missed it, this is for all hospitals, not necessarily nonprofits, or is it nonprofits and profits, or is it for all hospitals?
Senators, for nonprofits.
Just for nonprofits?
Just for nonprofits.
Okay, so we got some profit hospitals out there. I
Yes,
serve
sir.
on the board of a profit hospital, so it doesn't affect that then.
You sit on the board of a for-profit?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right, correct. This simulation, and again, I want to stress, a 2-week test that sunsets.
Right,
This
I
simulation
understand that.
does not include for-profit.
Okay, and the last part of the question, I think Senator Jackson may have hit on it, or somebody did it. If I'm a nonprofit hospital and I don't meet this certain level of injured care, then I can go into this pool and buy these credits out of this pool so that I do meet that level?
Well, if you don't mind me being a little more specific on the answer, would that be okay, Chairman Albers?
Please.
Okay. I believe there are several ways that capital will flow because of this. I think if you give within our society flexibility, I think you'll see capital flow. And here's 4 ways that I think they could flow. The first one is there'll be a bilateral contract. So imagine for a moment you're over the cap, or over the floor, I'm under the floor. I call you up, you're the CEO, you and I have a bilateral contract. I think the second thing would be that someone below the floor may want to invest in you. Now, you're a nonprofit, so I don't necessarily see that as a capital gain, but rather access to these credits. So now I maybe put in 20, 30, 40 million into your balance sheet, which definitely boosts up your balance sheet. You use that for different equipment. And in return, you might give me a 5-year stream of these credits. Third one would be an M&A. Because of the fact we are considering in the pilot, we'll be considering at the parent level, not at the individual hospital level. A parent company may say, you know what, if I pick up these 2 rural hospitals, or this urban and this rural, we now move capital into those areas and at the same time move the credits back in. I think those are, and then finally the fourth one is, we would like to see if, and again, I want to stress this, I'm in tech, so I fail every day about 500 times, meaning my products fail, our testing fails, you name it. So I am so used to Thomas Edison, 10,000 ways how not to do something. We do that every day. So I'm not saying, or I don't want to speak for Chairman Hufstadler, but this is a could it happen? But if it does happen, I think around the second year, once the policy is implemented, assuming we can even agree to a policy in 2023 or 2024, I believe there will be an exchange. The reason why a CFO of a large organization is going to want to do everything they can to do all kinds of hedging, by long, by short, collar, et cetera, and an exchange would allow for derivatives. And I think those are the type of things that a sophisticated CFO of a sophisticated organization would like to do.
Yeah. Oh, please don't misunderstand. I agree on the study.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't, in my mind, trying to make sure that, you know, that these hospitals are not discouraging indigent care. And
Correct.
it'd be easier to discourage it would be very easy to discourage indigent care and say, I'm just going to buy these credits from somebody else to keep them out of my hospital.
Well,
I think that's what I would do.
right, I think that's what,
Jackson.
and if you don't mind me saying, and again, I am not a master of the federal healthcare laws, so please know that. But there are several federal healthcare laws where when they knock on that hospital's door, the hospital must take them in. Life-threatening, emergency room, I can keep going through that list. So the idea that you can, quote, filter out based on a person, do they have private insurance, do they have cash to pay, et cetera, it's illegal in many instances. But you are right, there could be, and I'm not going to suggest otherwise because it'd be intellectually dishonest to say, could someone become a bad actor? But that would then assume two things. One, there's no bad actors in the current system. And I would say we would have to make that determination on your own to determine if that's the case. The second one is why not at least provide a mechanism that if someone wants to be a bad actor, we now have a market where they will have to pay even more money to the people above the floor. Now we have more money going into those folks that are doing the right thing. So I'm not quite sure, do we want to try and legislate against the 0.1 or the 99.9? But again, I want to stress this isn't touching any policy. This is just a 2-week test.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a pilot program for 1 year.
It is for 1 year, yes, sir, but it's just for 2 weeks that we would conduct the test.
Okay, we're going to do a quick time check here
Yes.
because we're at 4:30. Is there any other questions from the committee members? We've got a few folks signed up to testify.
I think it would be helpful to just have a 2-sentence or 2-paragraph explanation of what's broke. Other than I understand there's no standard that all of these nonprofits are going by when they self-report. That's clearly a problem. You know, that's clearly a problem out there.
I think the issue is, I don't know where we would go with this or what we would do with it, but we don't have the data currently to make a good decision. And this is just an attempt to get the data to say, in my mind, you know, to say what steps might we take to help the situation.
All right, we're going to move on. Thank you, Representative Jones. You want to take a seat back there?
Thank you
so
for
we
the
can call on you.
opportunity.
We've got
Chairman,
a couple people
Albers,
signed up.
I unfortunately have another other commitment. Do you need me to stay, or can
No,
I?
you go right ahead.
Okay, all right, thank
you. First, we have Brandy Sylvan from Department of Community Health, and you are on the phone, Brandy. I'm going to turn the microphone to you, and you can start talking here in about 2 seconds. Can you hear us?
Yes. Oh, okay. Sorry, I must have had a little delay on the video stream. I appreciate you guys having me remotely testify. My name is Brandy Sylvan. I am the Director of Government Relations with the Department of Community Health. The department has certainly been interested in this concept proposed by Representative Jones since he first presented it a few years ago. Our commissioner had the opportunity to serve on the study committee that looked into this idea in 2019. One of the key goals at the department is to improve access to health care. So certainly anything that is examining the provision of indigent charity care is of interest to us. As it is currently written, the department does have concerns about Senate Bill 31 and the administrative challenges it would present. I will say I have not seen the sub, so I'm working off of the most recent version that's online. But this bill would require the department to establish a floor for each facility to determine the value of an indigent care credit and to develop a platform for trading credits. DCH does not currently have existing staff that could dedicate the time and expertise needed for these tasks. There is no appropriation currently associated with this bill, though I know as Representative Jones, or I'm sorry, it may have been Senator Huffstetler said that there is interest in trying to identify what appropriation would be needed there. Additionally, the department would be required to submit a report, which in part includes an evaluation of the effectiveness of the pilot. There is not a clearly defined goal, which will make it difficult to measure success and identify recommendations for improvement. Were the pilot deemed to be a success and implemented in a real-world capacity, it's also not clear how the exchange of funds would operationally take place and what impact that could have to the existing Indigent Care Trust Fund. This fund is currently used to draw down federal dollars, and there is the potential for the exchange to jeopardize that drawdown. The department is supportive of efforts to improve access to health care, but we would certainly like to see more definition of intent and operational details provided.
And Brandy, we appreciate that. I think what you're going to find is in the substitute, Chairman Huffstetler pushed the date out to 2022, which probably will help with some of the appropriations. Did you want to mention anything about that, Chairman Huffstetler?
Right, we moved it to where it wouldn't start until April of next year, so I think it, any appropriations could be worked on before then.
Okay, and so I think regardless, we would need to engage, we would need to contract with an external entity to develop this, and would likely need to engage actuaries to assist with this as well. So definitely that would be a key component.
That's great. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and we're going to keep moving just because we are running short on time. So thank you so much. We're going to hang up, and you can continue to watch online if that's okay, Brandy.
Okay,
Thank you. All right, Mr. Tim Kibler in the hallway. Would you come to the podium?
He's not here. Let's move on.
Good to see you, Tim. If you could keep your remarks brief, we are running out of time.
I will do my best, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tim Kibler. I'm with the Georgia Alliance of Community Hospitals. I am here, unfortunately, to act in opposition to my friend Senator Huffstetler's bill. We have been trying to work with Representative Jones to see if we can come up with a compromise, but at this point, we are very far away from a compromise. Again, let me be clear, I represent the not-for-profit hospitals in Georgia. The members and their management companies must be not-for-profit. So this is, all of our hospitals are the ones that would be the universe that would be involved in this study. And I am not, we have reached out to our membership across the board, and we're yet to find a single hospital that's supportive of moving forward with an effort like this. I apologize, Mr. Chairman, I couldn't hear clearly in the hall, but I am concerned as we have moved forward today that it sounds like we may be contemplating a different indigent care requirements for not-for-profits versus for-profits. And I know that's not your intent, and it may have been, I may have misunderstood what was being said, but I certainly want to caution the committee that we would have great problems with having two different standards on that front. We appreciate that Representative Jones is trying to find a way to bring money to financially vulnerable hospitals. We have a disproportionate share of financially vulnerable hospitals in our state. We would simply suggest that there be a much more impactful and more significant resources could be brought to bear if we look outside the hospital systems to try to bring new resources to stabilize those financially vulnerable hospitals. I'll be glad to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
A very brief question from Senator Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we had Medicaid expansion, wouldn't that address in a profound way the financially vulnerable hospitals?
Were the state to expand Medicaid, it would bring many more resources than could be brought under this proposal. Yes, ma'am. There are other ways that could be done. At the risk of going over my time, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. But for instance, I know one of the other committees in the Senate's had debate about whether to put a casino amendment on the ballot next year. Should that be done and that money be dedicated to Medicaid and indigent care it would dwarf the amount of money that could come from a proposal like this. And that's no disrespect to Senator Hufstedler or Representative Jones.
Right.
It is just, there are other ways to bring significantly more resources than would be contemplated under an exchange system like this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, again, the purpose of this bill for the chairman is to study, and then only
Yes,
that.
sir, I
So,
understand that.
Thank you, okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Ethan James, why don't you come in next, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Ethan James with the Georgia Hospital Association. We represent more than 160 hospitals throughout the state of Georgia, from our small, rural, not-for-profit, community-based, critical access type hospitals to our large multi-hospital health systems throughout the state. We basically represent just about every hospital in the state. So I want to make a distinction later on about not-for-profit versus for-profit hospitals. When Representative Jones, and I know this is Senator Hufstedler's bill, but when Representative Jones first approached me about this years ago, I told him it was an interesting idea. And in fact, I was thinking about it. Someone to call it a modest proposal, much as the satirist Jonathan Swift suggested back in the 18th century, that the poor sell their children to the rich during the Irish potato famine. But again, I do think this is an interesting idea, an outside-the-box idea. But the problem with thinking outside the box is that quite often you don't know what's going on inside the box. Inside the box of the hospital industry is 10 million patient encounters each year, 150,000 employees, 15% Medicare, Medicaid average underpayments, groundbreaking, life-saving care, and more than $2 billion in uncompensated care. And I want to point out something else that Representative Jones talked about there is no consistent definition for charity care. Hospitals get to kind of make that up as they go along from hospital to hospital. Absolutely not true. And this is what I mean about not knowing what's going on inside the box. Inside the box, charity care is absolutely defined by the state. In fact, I will share with the author and with the committee those definitions from the state. And I think in here, he continues to talk about charity care and sometimes indigent care. Well, those are two very different things, and it depends upon where you are on the federal poverty level. What he's talking about hospitals having different definitions is community benefit, which can include charity care and indigent care. But again, this is where I think Representative Jones is not really understanding what is happening inside the box. I think you heard Brandy Sylvan with the department talk about some of the mechanisms that the department does have. That program basically does exist already. In order to qualify for your certificate of need, these healthcare facilities, they have to meet a certain amount of charity care. It's 3% currently by the state. Most of our hospitals historically meet that all the time. A lot of times your ambulatory surgery centers don't meet that charity care floor. Therefore, they have to pay into the Indigent Charity Care Trust Fund. It is matched with federal dollars, which does bring new dollars into the system, very importantly. This would not do that. I'm really not sure how he would do it. Again, we've been talking about this for 3 years. I have encouraged Representative Jones to work with the department, who we believe already has all this data. In fact, in this bill, it does contemplate the department's hospital financial survey. This is the same thing hospitals would use to go through this simulation, but the department already has it. Why is he not working with them to come up with this model to see if it works, instead of forcing hospitals to try to play this simulation? I appreciate that he's pushed this out even further, 2022, but right now, even this time that we're spending addressing this instead of working on solutions to this pandemic and getting more people vaccinated, I really believe is not the appropriate use of hospitals' time. Even next year, hopefully we are out of this pandemic, but hospitals will take years to recover from this. The hospitals lost nationwide $323 billion in 2020 of revenue. This doesn't introduce new money into the system. All this does is move deck chairs around the Titanic. And I say Titanic purposely. This is a Titanic problem, indigent charity care. More than $2 billion annually in Georgia of indigent charity care, uncompensated care.
So, Mr. James, we could stick to the purpose of the bill, which is
Yes.
a study of this. I think you mentioned just a moment ago that this data is already provided to DCH. So
Correct.
if that's the case, my assumption is getting a copy of it's fairly simple and require little to no work of the hospitals. Is that not true?
It would require little to no work of Representative Jones to take that data and put it into this model. But I must point out, when he talks about having maybe a third party run this, because clearly the department stated they don't have the resources to do this. I didn't hear if he said it in here, but he testified in the House just about an hour ago that he would have other entities do this. And a House member asked a very important question. What about data security? How do we know that whatever entity that the state which has this type of data security that we need, the state is very, very secure with this data. Now we're just going to farm it out to somebody else that we're not sure about? Again, the state has the data. If Representative Jones wanted to get that and work through models, it wouldn't even have to include us. But I can't, something else that I must say to this committee, I can't get this out of my head about him talking about credits. These are patients. These are people with health issues, serious health issues, life-threatening illnesses and injuries. And he wants to talk about credits. These hospitals have a mission to treat them, and not-for-profit and for-profit hospitals do it both. And I think this is something else that's very important to point out. Not-for-profit hospitals pay taxes. They absolutely pay taxes. They pay taxes on employment. Again, we have 150,000 very secure and well-paid jobs in this state. Doctors, nurses, other clinicians, all the hospital support people, they pay employment taxes on that. Not-for-profit hospitals pay taxes on non-clinical equipment and property. And I think there's also an inference by only applying this to not-for-profit hospitals. There's some sort of inference that for-profit hospitals don't do charity care. Nothing could be further from the truth. For-profit hospitals do proportionately just as much indigent charity care as our not-for-profit hospitals. They're an important part of this. He mentioned EMTALA, the rule that says hospitals have to treat patients. That applies to for-profit hospitals as well. Again, this is what's happening inside the box. But I go back to the patients being credits. I can't get it out of my head that this feels like we're commoditizing poor patients. In fact, Representative Jones even said to me that if this really works the way he envisions, he can even turn this into credit futures and all sorts of stock market type of ideas, trading and selling what I believe are lives, not credits. I don't want to put those on the auction block, these poor people's lives, these indigent charity care people. Mr. Chairman, he did mention that this is just a pilot. It wouldn't take a lot of time, 2 weeks, 2 days, 2 hours. He's even mentioned 2 hours of the hospital's time. Hospitals are not going to go in this shooting from the hip with such a serious issue and such massive financial resources on the line. Yes, sir. They are going to take this seriously. They're going to prepare for it. If this is what the General Assembly passes and is signed into law by the governor, they would take this seriously. It would be a significant use of their time. When I've talked to my hospital members, some of my CEOs haven't taken a day off since last February because of this pandemic. It doesn't matter if it's just 2 weeks or just 2 days or just 2 hours. We don't have time for this. It's not really the time. And Mr. Chairman, let me just finish up. Since I started off with a literary quote, let me just talk about another famous author who at one point said in his philosophy, from each according to his means, to each according to his needs. And that was Karl Marx, I believe, in the Communist Manifesto. Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
That was certainly an interesting way to end your comments, Ethan. First off, I think everybody here would agree that we are most thankful for our hospitals, for our health centers, for our doctors, for our nurses, our first responders, and everybody who is doing a great job since the pandemic hit a little less than 11 months ago now. Let's not confuse the issues, though. We got people way out in the weeds on this one. We are still talking about the chairman's bill, which is a study. And a year and many months from now, what probably will take all of about 6 minutes for a database person to pull about a data, I think is really apples and oranges. So I appreciate everything you're doing. Let's make sure we stay a little more focused into what's happening. I'm going to let the chairman respond to anything he wants to, and then we're going to call the question.
I'll have a
Mr.
wrap-up discussion. if
Okay,
that's
great.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just offer, I do believe that you're focusing on the IT part of it, but this is the financial part of it as well. It would require tremendous resources and tremendous preparation for our hospital administrators. This is not just a 6-minute data pull.
All right, well, we can agree to disagree on that one, but we can
Thank
agree
you,
the
sir.
great work you all did. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So if I could wrap up in a few of those points. And first, I certainly don't look at patients as credits. I was in there Saturday, with somebody that I came in at 6 Saturday morning. They had a cold leg, no circulation, rushed in there, did open heart surgery. Was watching a movie with my wife Saturday night. I got off a couple hours, and there was a train wreck coming from Bartow County over that we took care of, and they're never credits in my mind. They're always patients, and we do take care of them. And he's right. We do have charity care in a lot of places. The data I was told, talking to DCH, they didn't have the level of data that was needed for this. They've got those that paid, but they don't have the data that says they were in for a gallbladder or something. I don't think we have the data at this point. I do think somebody like Georgia Tech would be a great one to do this. They have CMS contracts with the federal government. They know how to keep data private, and I think they would be a good one to engage on this. And again, while his bill originally had multiple components to it, this is just a study. It's just a study, and I think I would like to get this data. And I know that I've got commitments from the LG's office that the resources will be there to make this taken care of and not be a burden on anybody.
I've got a question from Senator Thompson.
More of a comment. Ethan had commented that we're talking about cybersecurity within the hospitals, and that cybersecurity within the hospitals is strong. I would submit that 2 years ago, I chaired that study committee for the Hospital Association around the state, and we were at a crisis point. And the study came back that the hospitals were not ill-equipped. They're healthcare professionals. That's what the CEOs and those that are running hospitals said. We are focused. We went to school to take care of patients, not data. And that they were in a crisis point that unless you were a very large hospital, you did not have a chief security officer. And we were looking at trying to put together some component to be able to protect these hospitals, because in the event, one data breach would bring them to their knees. So although, as you said, Mr. Chairman, and I think we all agree, we believe in the hard work that's being done within the hospitals, but I would disprove the fact that the hospitals are securing this data well. They came to us for the study committee.
Thank you. Chairman Hufstedler, you're now as a member of the committee, what was your pleasure?
I would like to see the committee's pleasure, if we could.
Well, actually, you're a member right now, so you can do whatever you want. Would you like to make a motion?
Well, I would move that we move forward with LC number 338695S.
I've got a motion. I've got a second.
No, you don't. No, I'm
No?
not second.
All right, well, you have your hand up.
I was just discussion.
Okay, we're not there yet. So do we have a second? All right, we've got a second from Senator Thompson. Now there is discussion. Senator Orrock.
Well, I must say that I find compelling the basic position of the Georgia Hospital Association, and that is that you couldn't have picked a worse time to launch something like this. And I know that our chairman, who's frontally engaged in the trenches, saving people's lives, knows that better than anybody. The sound of my voice, I'm sure that's your life's work. But I find it compelling to think of the financial, emotional, psychic toll on on these institutions, and that it would be prudent if one is convinced that this is the path to take, to not do it now, and to be in conversation with the entities that have been in the trenches over the last year and are going to be in the trenches for some time yet to come. I just don't take lightly the statements of the hospitals about what this would require of them. When, as he said, CEOs that haven't had a day off since last February. I mean, can we hear that? Can we? I take that in. I listen to that. I honor that that narrative.
Well, I would say I've talked to some in that business that are interested in this, and also say, again, that's one of the reasons we moved it to a year from April, to make sure there's no burden this year. But I don't know that there's really anything I could do on this that would make some of them want to go forward with this, getting this information.
So if I could clarify that, Chairman Hostetler, this is 14 months in the future. Okay. All right.
We call the vote. I'm not sure where I am on this yet. Did we hear from anybody that's for it, from the hospitals?
We did not.
So is it, you wouldn't be doing anything to hurt the hospitals, but why aren't they for it? How's this going to help? How's this going to help a hospital in my county that just shut down about 2 years ago, lost 180 jobs, and now I've got a new hospital that just bought it, we're trying to build, and they're against it. You got to give me a reason to vote for this.
Okay.
Because they're doing something for my community that I don't see how this bill will help them. So tell me how this will help, so I can help you, because I don't want to vote against your bill.
I think in the long run, it will help them. I didn't solicit those that have said they would like to see this done to come forward. There's big hospitals that have billion-dollar balance sheets over last year that aren't interested in this. There's others that are hanging on that would like some more help and look at it that way, but I did not solicit them to come have that discussion here.
Are these nonprofit hospitals?
Yes.
They're going to look at again.
It would be, it's April of next year for 1 week and December of next year for 1 week. It would be a data dump of what they've got.
Further discussion?
Well, I would just say, full disclosure, what we just heard from Senator Gooch, you know, I am in the downtown Atlanta. I have, you name a hospital and it's in my district. And I can't support something at this point that there is such adamant opposition to. And the fact that the House member has been coming at this from several directions over 3 or 4 years, and it hadn't passed the smell test at this point. But I just think that at a minimum, the timing is not ideal.
I would think that Grady Hospital in your district would be one of the big beneficiaries if we were to look at any changes in the future.
Well, as I said, I think the solution to the hospital problem is, and Senator, I give you all credit that you have been on this page for a long time, pointing out how Medicaid expansion in this state, bringing in federal dollars to our healthcare system, funding our healthcare infrastructure, expanding Medicaid, and getting us off the list of the states that have the highest uninsured. I think that's a pathway that could really be transformative.
And you're right. Years ago, I supported doing what Mike Pence did in Indiana.
Yeah, you certainly did.
All right, we're going to wrap this up here. Senator Gooch.
You may have the votes to pass it, and I'm not trying to kill it or encourage, but Northside Hospital, are they favorable or unfavorable to this? Does anybody know? Because they're in part of the district I represent. North Georgia Health Systems is totally against it. They're Hall County and 4 or 5 other counties. So I'm just trying to figure out where we are.
I haven't heard from Northside specifically.
This may be a brilliant idea, Chairman. I'm not trying to hurt the bill. I'm trying to figure out where my people are.
Okay.
Fair enough. All right, Senator Thompson.
I was just going to say that to Senator Orrock's comment about funding, that I think the reason our state's in such a great position is we examine the numbers before we throw money at a problem. So we look at problems first, we get the facts, and then if it warrants money, then we appropriate money. All the study committee is trying to, or study is trying to do, is to take a 2-week window and look at data to be determined whether or not there's some options on that. And so again, I think it's prudent that we're willing to look at it. I struggle a little bit why a hospital would be afraid to have a study done to be able to examine that. And like he has said, there are some that are out there that are favorable to it. So maybe money is the answer, but I would be opposed to throwing money at something until we examine through a study and be transparent with the numbers.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? 4-3, motion passes. Best of luck in rules, Chairman Hostetler. If there's no more business, this meeting is hereby adjourned.